Welcome to Versus Series Rounds, where I take the format of the standard Versus Series and break it down to one element. Today we will be examining the unarmed martial arts skills between Darth Maul, the Sith assassin, versus Kar Vastor, the jungle warrior. Let's set up the ground rules. This will be an observation of Darth Maul during the time of the Phantom Menace, strictly from the Legends continuity, utilizing such material as the novels, the Dark Horse comics, the source books, and of course, the movies. For this particular matchup, we will only be looking at Maul's abilities as a physical martial artist, meaning that he will not be using his lightsaber, but his force augmentation will be allowed. For Kar Vastor, we will be examining him during the events of Luke Skywalker and the Shadows of Mindor, utilizing such material as Shatterpoint and Coruscant Nights. Darth Maul was crafted into a weapon from birth. As a child, his master Darth Sidious put him through what was essentially Sith boot camp, to the point where Maul was doing one-handed push-ups and sit-ups at the age of 3. And after a grueling month-long test on Mustafar, Sidious finally recognized Maul as a Sith Lord, an assassin worthy to reveal himself to the Jedi. Though Vastor was not trained from anyone in particular, at least from what we can see in the lore, I would argue that the jungle of Harun Kal was his primary instructor. Where Maul was molded by a Sith Lord, Kar was forged by the wilds. And once he became an adult, he was undisputedly the fiercest beast in the jungle, and by Mace Windu's estimation, one of the most dangerous men in the galaxy. I would liken Maul's style and physique to that of Bruce Lee, deceptively fast, but still packing a powerful punch. And perhaps Maul's greatest attribute was his dexterity. As a child, Maul was not only trained by Darth Sidious, but by the Academy of Orsis, where he likely learned the principles of Tiras Kasi, a discipline designed specifically for non-Force sensitives to fight against Jedi. This discipline, coupled with Maul's Force augmentation, made him a very deadly and swift opponent. This enabled him to fight faster than even a droid could perceive, and of course, allowed him to contend with and defeat several Jedi. In fact, let me rant for a few seconds. Technically speaking, Darth Maul has never actually been outright defeated by a Jedi adversary. Yes, even Obi-Wan Kenobi, who killed Darth Maul by way of plot convenience, not skill. In terms of the direct confrontation, Maul handled both Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan Kenobi without much issue. Alright, short rant over, I really can go on forever on that one. As stated, Maul was a Bruce Lee type, not the most physically imposing Zabrak in terms of mass, but as the old adage goes, speed kills. In terms of Kar Vastor, we don't know much about his upbringing or what forms of combat he may have studied, but judging from his fights with Mace Windu, he was quite skilled, even if he wasn't professionally trained. Vastor fought more with instinct, more with a brawler's mentality. Like the jungle, he himself was an untamed beast. As Windu would say of Vastor, he seemed to be all teeth and claws, and fierce snarling assault. And this would all play into his natural speed, something befitting his innate instinct. Like a tiger or a leopard, he attacked without inhibition. His speed was such that neither Han Solo nor Luke Skywalker could easily perceive his movements when fighting the man. That said, Maul might have a slight advantage in terms of technical skill, at least with his speed, but Kar Vastor's own reaction time is nothing to scoff at, and he would take any advantage Maul might present to him in the heat of battle. When regarding Maul's strength and fortitude, the young Zabrak could deal copious amounts of damage, and welcomed pain like an old friend. It can even be argued that much of Maul's training was more of his tolerance of pain than his effectiveness in martial combat. While at the Orsis Academy, he never used his force powers in any obvious way, and still prospered, in one case, surviving for several days in a jungle full of beasts with nothing more than a vibroblade, and keep in mind, he was still an adolescent, no more than 12 years old. And much like Mace Windu during the Battle of Tatooine, Maul was capable of denting droid Durasteel with ease. But even with all of that, Kar Vastor is almost in a different weight class. I would liken him to a young Mike Tyson in the sense that almost any of his blows could be knockouts. Each of his strikes were haymakers. Where Maul was a viper, Vastor was a gorilla. Vastor has more mass against Maul. This usually wouldn't matter, as Maul can compensate with his force augmentation. But Kar Vastor also has force augmentation on his side. As displayed in his fight against Mace, he could hold the Jedi Master in a bear hug, and whenever he took a punch, he shrugged it off with very little worry. Keep in mind, this is the same Mace Windu who, months later, was punching through droid alloy. This is further solidified when looking at Vastor's fight with Luke Skywalker. As read from the shadows of Mindor, impossibly powerful hand seized Luke Skywalker's shoulders as Vastor lifted him like a doll. It is true that Maul's own head can be used as a weapon, highlighting a headbutt with a pointy in. However, any blow that he land on Vastor would not likely end the fight, nor slow it down. Maul could draw blood, but it wouldn't bring someone like Vastor down. In terms of raw strength and constitution, Vastor has an advantage, packing a substantial punch as well as being blessed with an iron jaw. That's not to say that Maul could not take a punch. In fact, he was trained to be brutalized. But in retaliation to Vastor, he doesn't quite stack up, pound for pound. The largest difference between these two was how they used their bodies as tools. For Darth Maul, he used his body with cunning and calculation. For Kar Vastor, he used his body with reckless abandon. Maul was a beast-turned-assassin. Vastor was a beast-turned-monster. Where Maul would use a series of punches and kicks to whittle Kar down, Vastor would use his teeth and claws to literally chew Maul away. So the question is, which tactic would more likely subvert or overwhelm the other? Let's set up this fight. Darth Maul versus Kar Vastor. Two different animals in their own right, but no less deadly for it. If this fight ever were to go down, I would see it playing out much like the fight between Kar Vastor and Mace Windu, with Darth Maul taking the place of Mace Windu. In some form of honor, or jungle rules as Vastor calls it, they would fight without the aid of weapons. Let's say this fight takes place in a nondescript, caged octagon. Think your typical mixed martial arts fighting ring. The following is a set of hypothetical fight scenarios between the two opponents. First, let's look at the early fight. Much like Windu versus Vastor, I think these two would collide in the center of the cage. And much like the scene from the novel, the collision would not be just two bodies, but two node channels of the Force. They would twist and turn within each other, thrashing on any exposed piece of skin. Much of this early fight would look like a battle between two animals, Maul using his horns to scar Vastor, and Vastor using his teeth and claws to scar Maul. If this sort of fight is kept up, and Maul continues to trade blows with Vastor pound for pound, I would favor the Jungle Warrior for a 2-to-1 advantage. His style and his powers are just like that of a knockout boxer. He comes out quick, and he comes out hard, squeezing Maul in a bear hug, imposing his brawn, or catching Maul with one too many haymakers. And I don't believe Darth Maul would be able to match him in the first few minutes. If Darth Maul does take a step back, realizing that Kar Vastor would not be defeated by meeting him head on, I believe this fight would progress in the mid-range fight. Instead of grappling with Vastor, or tackling him into the cage wall, I think the Sith Lord would start applying his Tiras Kasi martial arts skill. In this way, Maul would better read Vastor, anticipating his strikes, countering with his own. And while Maul would land more kicks and punches, I do not believe he would do enough damage to bring down Vastor. Mace Windu was also able to tag Vastor several times while utilizing his infamous form of martial combat, Vapad. This is called Vapad, Kar. A fierce light burned in Mace's eyes. How many arms do you see? Then he hit Vastor twice in his nose before the Lord Pellic could even blink. But even with Windu's advantage, Vastor powered through, showcasing some of his own tactical skill in combat, rolling with Mace's kicks and punches rather than meeting them head on. Windu's fist whipped backhand to snap Vastor in the base of the skull as he passed, a knockout blow. But Vastor must have felt it coming. He pitched forward, rolling with the punch so that it flipped him end over end. Boxing fans are familiar with this as a shoulder roll, or a Philly shell defense. This, coupled with Kar Vastor's ability to recuperate from blunt force trauma, would keep him in the fight. That all said, I don't see Kar nor Maul taking a decisive edge against the other in the mid-range fight. Maul could certainly muster a counter to Vastor's brawn, but it wouldn't be enough to knock Kar out. Therefore, I see this fight ending after several long minutes, or in the context of the UFC or boxing, the 5th and 12th round, respectively. Blows would be traded, ribs would be broken, and skin would be torn away. But in the late fight, I think the two contrasting styles will become more distinct. Maul's background as an assassin and as a trained martial artist would garner him an advantage. Much like Mace, he would find ways to attack Vastor's soft tissue, his ears, and his nose. One of the reasons Mace lost to Vastor, by the Jedi's own estimation, was that Vastor was younger, stronger, and faster. And by Qui-Gon Jinn's estimation, Darth Maul was a warrior in his prime, so the aspects of youth would not play a factor. Maul has also proven that he can sustain a long-form fight, and for this, I would give Darth Maul a 2-to-1 advantage over Vastor in the late fight, bringing their overall totals to a 5-to-10 split. Now, I know what most of you are thinking. Oh, a tie. Neither of them wins. Well, this will be true in a sense, yes. In a by-the-number scenario, I do think this matchup would be a split decision. However, I do favor a certain scenario playing out, and that is the late fight. Of all the scenarios, I believe Maul would get himself through the early and mid-fight, keeping out of reach of Kar's bear hug, and avoiding Vastor's knockout blows. In the case of Vastor, I think his best chance is the early fight, looking for an early knockout or suffocation. But in the case of Maul's training and his displays of martial prowess, I favor his skill against Kar's own, eventually taking down the jungle warrior by way of swift kicks and punches to Vastor's vitals. And in conclusion, I declare Darth Maul, the Sith assassin, the bloody, bruised, and broken victor. Of course, this is all my educated guess based on my interpretation of the lore. Do you agree that Darth Maul would take a majority against Kar Vastor in a purely physical bout? Or do you believe that the Lord Pellic would take the majority? Let me know in the comments below, and of course, peace, love, and may the Force be with you. Always.
We just really wanted to show how deadly the weapon could be.
His programming and skills were so developed, he could even contend with members of the Jedi Council.
Of the dark side.
Like this guy, what is he doing? Stop shooting at me. I'm a lightsaber wielding foe. Don't shoot at me.
His horns were long. His horns were long. His horns were long. Sally sells seashells by the seashore. The shells Sally sells are surely from the sea. How much wood would a woodchuck chuck if a woodchuck could chuck wood? If a woodchuck could chuck wood, a woodchuck would chuck as much wood as a woodchuck chuck. Oh God. Okay, I think the test is okay though. Let me